Also, for tomorrow night, we're doing worship in the wild, meaning that we're going to be on the tree lot for an evening of worship, beginning at 6:15 and going to 7. So if you're going to one of the 7 o'clock presentations, you'll get there. But did want to remind you we're having a little worship opportunity tomorrow. It's been a while since we've been on the tree lot for worship, so tomorrow night there will be an opportunity. So I hope you'll be able to make that. Today we are going to be looking at a story that's near and dear to my heart. You'll find out if you didn't already know. Story of Zacchaeus. Jesus has left the Galilee and is on his way to Jerusalem. This is leading up to the crucifixion in Luke's gospel. And so we have encounters along the way. Several weeks ago, you remember the 10 lepers that were a part of the story, those that were healed by Jesus, and he was going through a certain town. It says, doesn't tell us where, and 10 lepers were there, and they started calling to Jesus to have mercy on them. And so he told them to go and share with the rabbi. Well, this is on this same story, this same trip that Jesus has done. He started off in Caesarea Philippi, if you remember, setting his sights on Jerusalem. And so from that point on in Luke, from somewhere around the 16th chapter through this period of time, we're continuing to hear stories about Jesus on the road and Jesus on the move. And so Zacchaeus is one of those. So we're going to, first of all, recount the scripture. He, meaning Jesus, entered Jericho. So we're getting close to Jerusalem now. Jerusalem and Jericho, if you remember, about 18 miles apart. At the bottom of the hill is Jericho. And so Jesus has entered Jericho and was passing through it. It's interesting. Jesus is set his sights on Jerusalem in this beginning of this story long ago, and moving toward Jerusalem. And he is in a hurry, and he is in a hurry to get to Jerusalem. But throughout the story, he stops constantly or encounters people along the way. And this is one of those stories. So a man was there named Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was rich. He was trying to see who Jesus was, but on account of the crowd, he could not, because he was short in stature. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore tree to see him, because he was going to pass that way. When Jesus came to the place, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house today. So he hurried down and was happy to welcome him. All who saw it began to grumble and say, he is gone to be the guest of one who is a sinner. Zacchaeus stood there and said to the Lord, look, half of my possessions, Lord, I will give to the poor. And if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I will pay them 4 times as much. Then Jesus said to him, today salvation has come to your house, this house, because he too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek out and save the lost. Well, if you've been around me for very long, which has been a long time now, you learn before too long that this is one of my favorite stories, and it's probably, I often talk about it as probably being my first theological thought as a first grader. I came along at a time and an age and stage in life, as many of you did, where you actually had the Pledge of Allegiance and a devotion to start your school day off. You know, a lot of places don't do those kinds of things anymore, but we did. And so back in 1960, as a first grader, we were given the opportunity to tell a Bible story. And so I picked this particular one. And so I told the story, and then the teacher would say to each of us after we had done that, well, what did you learn? And my theological thought was, as a first grader, I need to climb a tree to see Jesus. And that's kind of stuck with me all these years. The times in my life when there's so much junk going on in my life, so many things going on around me, that the only way I can see Jesus is to climb the tree. Don't know if you've had such thoughts in your life or whether that was something that you thought of also as a young one. But I thought it was interesting that just in the moment that came to me for some reason, that there are times that there's so much going on, I've got to climb the tree. And so the theological thought has stuck in my mind ever since and has been, I guess, until my dying day, hopefully, remind myself that there's times that I just have to climb the tree. Now, one of the things that we remember, if you do, about going from the Galilee, which is up here in the top, up in this area, the Sea of Galilee right here. You see that area there, and then north of that is Mount Hermon and others. But there was always different ways to get to Jerusalem because of the trade routes that went along there. And so on this slide, you can see these are editing three different kinds of routes. First of all, there's the eastern route, and that is you start up here at Caesarea Capernaum, and head down, crossing over the Jordan River into what is now Jordan, and then cross back over to get to Jericho and then up. This was the traditional site that many people did because if you were an Orthodox Jew, as Jesus was, you would avoid going through Samaria, which is in. So the country is divided into the Galilee and into Samaria, and then you get down into Judea and head south into the wilderness and into the desert, moving into Egypt. And so, and then the other route that most people would take would be if you wanted to do shopping along the way, or if you wanted to have an alternative route, you would go along here and come on what is called the coastal route. And so you would go around the other way. But Jesus often, and we see the story of Jesus encountering the woman at the well, and most people think that this central route, the route through Samaria, is the one that Jesus probably took based on the scripture. He encounters the woman at the well, and he does that in Samaria. It's Sychar or Shechem up in this area here. And so that's where Jesus encounters this woman. And so along the way, Jesus would encounter people. He would share stories. He would do healings. He would and find out about them and their lives along the way. And I think it's interesting. We'll take a look at some of these too. But the elevations, as you know, change significantly. And those of you who have had a chance to travel with me understand that there's a great deal of change that takes place going through the country of Israel. And as we look at this topographical map here, you can see that there are different places along the way. And I just marked some of the ones that are here. Mount Hermon, which is in the northern tip of Israel, is a little over 9,000 feet tall. So it's the only ski resort in all of Israel is on Mount Hermon. They do have snow. It is up there sometimes at least 9 months out of the year. You can see evidence of snow on Mount Hermon. And they, like everyone else, goes nuts when it snows. And people will drive their cars from all the southern places to Mount Hermon to go skiing. And they'll get as close as they can, and then they just leave their car on the side of the road. So you might have to walk a couple of miles to get there. because there's so many people up in that area when it snows with that. So you have here Mount Hermon, 9,000 feet tall. Here is Capernaum and the Sea of Galilee, which is minus 730 feet in sea level. I mean, so you have 9,000 feet that you can see 30 miles away from the Sea of Galilee, and then you've got 700 feet below sea level here. And then you go from here to Mount Tabor, which is 1,800 feet. Nazareth, that is 1,100 feet. Then you come down here into the Shechem to this area, it's 1,200 feet. And then you go, once ultimately you get to Jerusalem, you're here at 2,500 feet. And so it just kind of goes up and down. Here you see the mountainous area in the central part. Jericho down here also is minus 850 feet. And so you get 1,400 feet below sea level when you get to the Dead Sea. So it's an interesting country. All of that is in from up here to Jerusalem in this area is about 100-mile trek. And so Jesus has followed one of these routes to get along that way. And as we get closer to Jericho, as I mentioned, we have Jericho is at the foot of the mountain leading into Jerusalem. And we often talk about Jerusalem being the city high on the hill. And the reason is you can't get to Jerusalem without going up, no matter where you come from. And so this particular route is the traditional route. It is the route that many of the stories that we have with Jesus on this final trek come from. And so the story of the Good Samaritan by tradition is in this area. The story of Jesus in the wilderness is mostly from Jericho to Jerusalem. In this area here, you'll find that those stories are there. And so the story goes on and on with this. And so the story of Zacchaeus is only found in the Gospel of Luke. If you remember, we've talked about the story of Luke being the story of the least, the last, the lost, and the lonely. Those who have been marginalized in some way. We're currently doing a study with a professor from Candler School of Theology on Wednesday nights, and we are looking at the Gospel of Luke. You'll notice that most of our gospel readings for the rest of this year until we get into Christmas are all from Luke because we loosely follow the lectionary, and for that reason, you're going to have a lot of Luke this year. Next year, we move back into Matthew, the other synoptic gospel, with that. So the chapter 16 of this is one of the most famous chapters in the Bible. Most people can tell you these stories of the lost sheep, the lost coin, and the prodigal or lost son. And one of the things that I've found interesting is the translation of the word that's used here is lost, which means it's in the wrong place. You know, most of us know that if we've lost something, we've lost it because it's in the wrong place. And so if you look in the wrong place, you'll find most of the things that you have lost in life. And this is the place that we do that with that. So I want to look at Zacchaeus, first of all. In the Gospel of Luke, Zacchaeus is seen pretty much as a pathetic, despicable character. He's seen as a bad guy by the locals. And he's doing so, and it says that the reason is that he is the chief tax collector of Jericho. Now, the interesting thing is this point is that by being the chief tax collector, it means that he has a lot of tax collectors underneath him. So he has his group of tax collectors. But the interesting thing is, in the scripture, the only place a chief tax collector is mentioned is in this story. There is not an official title. This is not a professional title. chief tax collector. It's just one that Luke has labeled Zacchaeus for. And maybe he himself gave himself that title, but this is the only place that we find that. He's seen as a despicable or despised as a traitor. And why is he a traitor? He is working for the enemy. He's working for the Romans with this. He is a local. And the interesting thing is the Romans, when they would take over areas, would appoint tax collectors who would raise money for Herod or for Caesar, whoever was sitting on the chair at the time. And they would be the ones that would raise money. They were set fees that everybody was to pay. And then on top of that, the tax collector would add their cut. They would get a percentage. And if they didn't think that was high enough, then they would raise it more. And so, and this was for goods and services, but it also was a toll tax. If some of you were just sitting outside of your house and every car that came by, you would say, whoops, need to stop here. Tell me what you got in your car. And then you would decide how much they owe you for passing by your place. And so it was those things that were set, but also those things that were added. And so tax collectors, by the very nature of who they were, the fact that they were working for the enemy, they were taking money from their neighbors, it was just assumed that they were being corrupt. I don't know if you've ever seen stories in the Bible about a tax collector that was fair. Most of the time we see Zacchaeus changing his life in this story, but most of the time it's assumed that if you're a tax collector, you're corrupt. So Zacchaeus' life was successful by worldly standards. He is doing very, very well. He has moved up the chain to the point that he is in charge. The gospel says that he wasn't happy or fulfilled in life, though. And we have seen stories throughout history and time that remind us that just because you have goods and services and money and servants and all these things doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have a happy, fulfilled life. And so because the riches were gained by mistreating your neighbors. And so obviously you just kind of either decided when you took this job that the wealth and the notoriety and the goods that you get out of it were worth losing all your friends. And some of us maybe have made decisions in our lives at some time where we have alienated ourselves from those around us because of decisions we have made that have been to the non-benefit of those around us. But this was a trickle-down effect. As we said, as a chief tax collector, he's got a bunch of people that are paying him money who have gotten money the same way. And so it's a challenging time. So Jesus is passing through Jericho on his way to Jerusalem. There seems to be big crowds, dense crowds along the way. Part of this is because this is the time leading up to Passover. So lots of people are traveling. We looked at those three routes. All of them would have been filled with people. And as you start in the northern part of the country or the southern part, the closer you got to Jerusalem, the more and more people there were who were also on the journey. They were going the same. They would stop at the same QTs you're stopping at. You would stop at your relatives along the way, and you would pick them up. You would stay with them probably a night, and then all of you would head towards Jerusalem for the festival of Passover. So they're doing this. So the crowds are large. People that have heard Jesus is coming, they may have seen his reputation precede him in being here. Word is out. Jesus is on his way. This will be our first time to get to see this wonderful rock star that is coming from the Jerusalem or from the Jericho, Galilee area that is up there. So Zacchaeus, it says in the story, is short. So he sets aside his dignity. It was indignant for someone to run. It was indignant for someone to climb a tree. It was just not the proper thing that gentlemen did along the way. But we have here Zacchaeus saying that he is going to see Jesus. He's going to get a glimpse of this rock star. He wants to see close as he can this person. And so he runs ahead along the way and somehow fighting his way through the crowd, possibly of people that have lined up. Once again, Jesus has a kind of a parade without a permit here. He's got people lining up along the way to see him. And so he has that. For those of you that have been with me before, we go to the traditional site in Jericho where this story takes place. This tree is known as the Zacchaeus tree. By tradition, it is 2,000 years old as a tree. Probably in reality, it's 300 years old. But that doesn't mean, as you know from that point of the world, that through the arid temperatures that they have there, the root systems that are there, but also the fact that you can, tap into trees and extend their lives. That's what they do to fig and olive trees. Is that they tap into them by adding branches, and the branches begin to grow. So this tree itself may not be 2,000 years old, but that doesn't mean part of it is not that old or close to it, because it has continually had more and more added to it with this. I've never had anybody on my trip climb the tree, but it is a place that we do stop at when we have time. It gives us a chance to do that. And I think it's interesting. Outside there's this sign that tells us that this is the Zacchaeus tree. It is estimated that this tree, called the tree of Zacchaeus, is 2,000 years old. Its history goes back to the time of the visit of Christ to Jericho on the way to Jerusalem. On his way to Jerusalem, he met, MIT, under the evening shadows, a man called Zacchaeus. This man was the chief tax among the publicans, and publicans being another name for tax collectors. This man was rich. Because he was short, he climbed the tree of the sycamore to see Jesus Christ and asked Jesus to visit his home. Interestingly, in this, their take on it is that Zacchaeus asked Jesus to come to his home. And Christ accepted. Jesus stayed at his home for a day in recognition to the visit by Jesus. This man contributed half his wealth to the people, basically. And the Jesus Christ said to him, "This day, because this house has been salvation." So it has the story in its way. This is a historical marker. You can see with loosely spelled right words in English along the way. It gives us the point of the story, though. Interestingly, the name Zacchaeus means pure or righteous. So you have this man who was given a name at birth that is pure or righteous, who becomes someone who is not liked by his neighbors. He's someone that is anything but pure, anything but righteous earlier in his life. And so I think it's interesting that because of his richness, because of the way he has treated his neighbors, he has defiled the name that he was given with that. So Jericho is an important and wealthy city. It's the last oasis that you hit heading south of any significance, and 10,000 gallons of water a minute come from this oasis. It is still there. The oasis that would have been built around Jericho is the oasis that we go and see these days when we visit there. So it is an important city. It's on the main trade route, and for that reason, there would have been lots of commerce and lots of wealth It is green there when you're in the wilderness moving into the desert area. We see that Zacchaeus, or the story says that Zacchaeus is having trouble seeing Jesus, he thinks, because he is short. And the question's often been raised, is it Jesus that's short or is it Zacchaeus that is short? That makes it hard for him to see. By tradition, obviously, Zacchaeus is the one that is short. He was a wee little man, as the song says, that we learned as children. But he also is physically disabled because of punishment would be part of the assumption. Remember, we're in a world, in a time where people, the sins of the fathers are often passed down to those generations behind them. And so for that reason, we would think that there are those who would think because Zacchaeus is short, he must have done something, or his family has done something to dishonor God. We don't think that obviously today, but at the time, that is one of the things. One of the things about salvation, Jesus says in the 9th verse here, today salvation has come to this house because he too is a son of Abraham, reminding us that Zacchaeus is one of them. Even though he has been rejected, even though he has created challenges for his neighbors and friends, the bottom line is that he is one of us. And so restoration takes place as Jesus has come, and he says to him, you are now reinstated as one of us. And so we look forward to that. But salvation is immediate. He says, today this has happened because of what you have said and what you have done. Salvation is also therapeutic in that there's healing that takes place. And the salvation is inclusive because, obviously, Abraham is a part of that. Yeah, there we go. For some reason, I had two of the same slide. It must have been imported, yes. Just like in scriptures. But again, it just reminds me, this story does, of the fact that there are times that we do need to get rid of the stuff around us, that we do things. One of the things that Jim Labus keeps reminding us of is that sometimes we need to get away to retreat and to be more intentional about our relationship with Jesus. When you find yourself in the wrong place, meaning that you yourself have discovered that you're lost at this point in time, and I think we've all had moments in our lives where we felt like we might be lost, that for whatever reason we have not been as faithful to our faith as we should and could and ought to be, and for that reason. So I don't know what you do in your life to climb a tree to see Jesus, figuratively, literally. Don't know if you've climbed a tree recently in your life or not, but the world is a different perspective when you climb the tree. Our faith is different when we climb the tree. And so we remember in this story, Zacchaeus, the one who is forgiven with that. One of the things that I think is also an interesting note here is that when Zacchaeus gives away, he says, if anybody has been defrauded by me, I will give 4 times what it is that I have defrauded them from. And so not only am I going to give to the poor and those who are in need, but I'm going to give 4 times much, which is twice as much as what the law said. The law said that in Leviticus and others places in the Bible, that if you defrauded someone to repent or give retribution for what you've done, you're supposed to give twice as much as what you have defrauded them of. And so Zacchaeus, in a symbol of generosity and gratitude, says, not only am I going to give you what I need to give you, and that is twice as much, I'm going to twice that. And so 4 times is what I am willing to give you as a way to show that I am seeking forgiveness. I am seeking the opportunity to be in relationship with you. Now, here are the questions. I left some copies of the text on tables around, and if you didn't get one and need to look at it, that is great. The questions are several under each of the headings here, so if you want to include, pick whatever questions you want to out of this list. So talk amongst yourselves, please. Yes. Yes, it is, and it is a. Oh, excuse me. The question was, is the sycamore tree significant? It is, and I can't remember off the top of my head. I'll look at it and I'll tell you before we leave with that. But yes, it is. It is significant. It is a sycamore tree, and I'll look at it right now.